Good evening. This is the call to order for the Town of Raymond Budget Finance Committee. First on the agenda, we have the approval of the minutes from September 18th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion, we approve them as written.
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
Just one. I appreciate the promotion in here. Co-chair McKillop should be vice chair. Oh, I'm sorry, should be vice as opposed to the co-chair. So appreciate the promotion, but if we just make that change.
Okay. Then we would ask the town clerk to correct the minutes for Sean from co-chair to vice chair. Are there any other changes to the minutes? Okay. All those in favor to approve the minutes as amended? Okay. Okay. 1 to 2. Any not in favor? No. Okay. Did
No,
you
I
vote?
didn't.
You didn't vote, so
I'm in favor.
you're in favor.
Sorry,
Okay,
I
so
was-
it's unanimous. Okay, as amended.
Sorry. I'm so used to not voting, even though it's been a while.
I was just staring at you, and you're like, "What?"
Huh?
I was just staring at you, and you're like, "Oh, hey."
Yeah.
Okay, so under new business, the first item is update on the bank statement reconciliation for June, July, and August. And the finance director is not here. Sue, can you help us with that?
Yes, she's given me something to read in case she couldn't get in. For the statement update, for fiscal year 24 June statement, it's still in progress due to irregularities with prior months' reconciliation process. We have a stated work process for bank reconciliations, which is to include utilizing Trio, the accounting software. However, since December of 2022, the system was not utilized, and no checks were cleared in the system since that date. The October month should be completed next week once I clear out all outstanding checks at this point since January of 2024. And what that basically means is she had to go back through all of this current fiscal year to clear checks for the auditors. So she's working on that for statements. And what it also means, somebody else trying to get in, I'm sorry, I'm multitasking. What it also means is that it will be sometime before the statements are finished. She should have June. She's hopeful of having it complete with the auditors by the end of this week. But then the subsequent months are going to take some time to clear and complete, and to be completely caught up so that you're actually seeing the previous month's report at the beginning of the next month or near the beginning to mid next month won't be until close to budget season starting. And even that's a pretty aggressive goal for her to do, because right now she's spending most of her time with the auditors and getting the information they need to complete the audit. And that leads to the audit update. She says, I am currently correcting incorrect expense bookings that were placed in the incorrect account year. This amount will be moved to the fiscal year 2024 from the current fiscal year 2025. The proper instructions were not given to the staff personnel who were here to close out the fiscal year of 24, and they were incorrectly booked to fiscal year 25, the current year. This will be an amount over $100,000. This is not something I would have predicted upon arriving here in town. Even with this movement, the ending position of the town will come down to being almost identical to last year's ending net position. Unfortunately, I cannot provide you with any documentation until the audit is finalized due to the volume of corrective journal entries that I must process in order for our records to be correct. I'm working closely with the audit team of RHR Smith on all aspects of our financial records, and we'll be happy to provide you with a professional summary once this process is completed. And also, talking to the auditors, they are now thinking that it may be early next year before we actually have the final audit, but hopefully before budget season is in full swing.
Does anyone on the budget committee have any comments about the bank reconciliation or the audit?
I'm curious about all this correcting entries. I would like to hear more about that. That's very unusual. What's wrong there?
What's wrong there is Trio wasn't used to reconcile the bank. She was using bank reports to reconcile against the bank statement, not checking off outstanding checks in Trio. And she was making correcting entries to make Trio match the bank.
This was our previous finance director.
That was the previous finance
How long
director.
was she with us for?
3 years.
And somebody who's brand new is going to correct this?
That's correct. Someone who's brand new that has a very long level of experience with this and is working closely with the auditors to make the corrections.
I would tell you that our previous finance director was impeccably qualified, and, you know, I'm just saying that this doesn't sound like it doesn't add up to me, to tell you the truth.
There were no issues previously. It's just, I'm not familiar. You said it was Trio, I believe, is the accounting.
Trio is a software that we use, yes.
And this is software that we've been using for the past 3 years while she was director, or is this new?
Longer than that. We've been using it for, I'm guessing, around 7 to 8 at this point.
Does that mean we have to go back 2 more years and look at everything prior to this too, to see if those numbers are right?
The auditors don't think so. They think that they can, it depends, but they think that they can, if we can get all of last year completed, that we can move on from here.
I'm very concerned that someone who, in her first presentation, I'm sure she's well qualified, you know, did not have a very good grasp of the town's chart of accounts, in my opinion, is going to be correcting this, and somebody who did, you know, apparently has made errors, is what I'm hearing. That altogether is concerning to me,
Yes,
and
I agree.
I would like to know more about that.
You know as much as I do right now about that. We're waiting for the auditors to finish with this.
Is there an annual audit, Sue?
There is.
So
There very
last
much
year,
is.
there were no issues with the audit last year?
They wouldn't dig into the details unless they found an issue. And since she was making correcting entries in Trio, they didn't notice that she wasn't reconciling the bank statements correctly.
Once again, I find that to be incredible. So I'm gonna leave it at that. But the auditor's job is to uncover anything like that, and they follow a very, very detailed protocol. You know, the auditor we have now, it audits multiple communities and has for decades, and so, you know, it just doesn't sound right to me. But it worries me that this is happening with someone who has almost no experience here.
Anyone else? Any other comments? Any other comments, Sue?
Not for me, no. But I will keep you informed as we find other things or have something to report.
Okay. Next, we have the consideration of the purchasing policies that were collected from the other communities from our last meeting. And I was wondering, Sue, were you able to get the purchasing policy from Yarmouth? They had sent you one, but it was the wrong one. Just following up with you
Yeah.
on that.
No, the one that I got, I thought I had found it online, and I realized it was a personnel policy, not a purchasing policy. So that was my mistake. I reached out to them and they didn't get back to me.
Okay, so that's still not. So with that, I'd like to look at the purchasing policies that we got, and I made a summary sheet so that we could look at all of the towns and kind of compare where they are. In all cases, the purchasing agent is the town manager or the town manager's designee. It's interesting to look at the oversight and what's required with each block. The field and micro purchases some are up to 1,000 and some towns go up to 3,500 or as much as 5,000 in gray. And then whether a purchase order is required, when I met with Brenda, she indicated that she was interested in establishing a purchase order system for Raymond. Informal bids vary 5,000 to 35,000. In all cases, to make a significant purchase requires prior approval by the select board or town meeting. For the informal bids or the competitive bids, specs or written tech requirements are required, and we don't have that for Raymond. I think that we should implement written specs or technical documents, and we'd have to decide what we would recommend on where would the starting point with that would be. In one of the cases, which is gray, a CIP plan is required in order to go out and make these purchases. And we do have our CIP plans that we could tie the purchases together with where it is in the CIP plan, so we could keep track of it. In many of the cases, except for two, which was, Raymond is one of them, 3 bidders are required. So I think that's pretty standard procedure in these days and times with the cost of everything being so expensive that you'd go to get 3 quotes at a minimum with written specifications of what you're looking for equipment. Do we feel comfortable to discuss this, or do we want to make a recommendation to the select board? Does anyone have a preference on a policy that looks appealing?
Well, I'm not sure it's our job to put together the policy, actually. I think maybe to make some recommendations as to what should be in the policy, and I think it's more of a staff function to come with a proposed policy. I don't want to, step into administration, and so.
Okay.
So I'm just throwing that out there. I think that's maybe a little bit of an overstep for us, but I think it's, incumbent upon the town to have another look at the purchasing policy and to make some improvements. And so a little bit of history. It was decontented a number of years ago to match, what was happening. And so that was why it is not what it was. But anyway, it was matching what some department heads were doing, And so, so that's how we ended up at that place. And I thought then it was, too, I guess, or not structured as well as it could be, but we were trying to make it congruent with what was going on. It was pandemic times. There was a lot of things happening and so forth, or maybe it was slightly before the pandemic. I forget. But anyway, so it made sense at the time, but I think now to take another look at it and to, maybe look at what other towns are doing. I don't really believe in, copying other towns, but I think just to get a general idea of what they're doing and what are in the components within these policies. I mean, we could talk about those sorts of things and make a recommendation to I would assume probably the finance director to make that's who had, done the revised policy. It was not this finance director, obviously, and not Sharice, but Kathy Ricker had recommended that we take a look at the purchasing policy because it wasn't, as I said, congruent with the practices that were occurring.
And I think something too is the contingency on the bids, because I believe that they had said some of the bidding they had set out, they didn't get. And I mean, Sue, you might know more than I, that they didn't get 3 bids. So finding out if they don't get that many, what were the other options that we could do?
Well, one option that Nathan, that's the area where, you see it's the largest department, of course, and, the greatest expenditure of funds. But what I always understood to be happening was that he was getting verbal bids, and so that was different than written bids.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe very strongly in written bids.
Yeah.
And but he was getting verbal bids, he said, so, and I believed him, and I think he was, and so that's what he did. But I think that we should follow the model more of the Public Safety Department, where it's done formally and multiple bidders and done in a way that is administratively documented completely.
Absolutely.
I think that's really important.
Yep.
And so, I understand expediency, and I think Nathan used the term that bidding was a farce at one of the meetings. I think that was the term he used. I don't believe that. I think bidding's essential. I think it's the key to understanding what you're getting and what you're paying, and it's really important.
To add to that, that means then you have to write what you want, so everybody's bidding on the same thing. And I think that's one piece that's missing. As I said last month, we used to do a lot of business on a handshake. You can't do business that way anymore.
Right.
That's
And I think to have consistency across the town. I mean, you have one department doing it one way, and then another department doing it another way, and then I mean I don't know how it's happening in some of the other smaller departments, but I do know the 2 biggest departments are completely different in how they do it.
I agree. I think written bids are super important, and for fairness and just to be transparent and
so you know what you get.
right. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Karen, can I say something?
Okay.
Hi, sorry, I didn't know where to put the hand up. Just because I've been on the board for the last 12 years, anything that was brought to us from the board was through Dawn knowing what came with Nathan. So I guess the comments have been made several times that some departments do this, some departments do that. We would get phone calls from Dawn to say, hey, we found a good deal. He would pull the board, and that's how they went with some of the stuff. But Nathan always did go in and talk to Dawn. Nathan never brought anything to us without it going through Dawn first. So I just want to have that clarified, because I know the comment's been put out there several times as far as what some, departments are doing and what other departments are not doing. And it's, if it's got to be underneath the town manager, then it'd be under him. But I just didn't want it saying that, the departments were doing this thing wrong, is what I'm trying to clarify.
We just want
I'm
consistency.
saying they're doing it 2 different ways, and and that's something that the Board of Selectmen was well aware of. And
But that would have been under you, Dawn.
And I'll leave
Yeah.
it at that right now. I'll leave it at
Oh,
that.
well, but that would have been under you, because it always came to you first before we would make any of that.
I think
So
you were well.
I just
I
wanted
think
to
you were well.
clarify
I
that.
think you were well aware of how the process was working. You were
Yeah,
well
under
aware.
you, yes. I'm well aware of it because it always went to you first. So I just want to make sure that we're putting out there transparency on this.
Peter? would you like to speak?
Sure. 811 to Levitt Road, just an observation. The only bidding process that I've been involved with in the last few years with the town was with the comprehensive plan. So to Deanna's point, we put it out. We put out an RFP. I don't know if that is required of over a certain threshold that an RFP be put out for bid. We had a time frame. We followed actually the policy of the town for bids because I believe we had one to follow. There was actually some controversy over the amongst the committee because we got a second bid in, but it was after the deadline. And we said, well, we really have to look at the one bidder we have. But just to give you an idea, that can happen. I'm sure if you're bidding a truck or a front loader or something like that, there's so many around. Our issue was that so few municipalities were doing comprehensive plans that a lot of planning firms actually had kind of dropped that as part of their expertise. So we got one bidder, we reviewed it, they seemed to be adequate, and we followed the policy. I'm just curious if or a recommendation for any revision of that policy would be that it, I don't know, over a certain threshold of money, it requires 3 bidders if available, and that they basically will go through a formalized RFP for the purchase, and that there be a deadline for submitting bids, which I believe was in the policy when we looked at it, which is what gave us the reason to tell the one dissenting individual on the committee, well, let's look at this other bid. And it was like, we'd love to. We weren't happy at all with just having one bidder. I don't think anybody ever is. But the bottom line is the policy said that after this deadline, you have to go with what you got. So just my comments.
Dennis.
Okay, Dennis?
Dennis Morse, 340 Cape. The other select board meeting, September, clearly what Nathan stated was he hadn't gone to bid since 2003, and that he had a relationship with the select board where once the money went in the budget, he could buy whatever he needed. That's a quote. You can go look at the tape. I was kind of surprised at it, but he said the select board trusted him, and in fact, I think he bought the dump truck last year without even the Budget Finance Committee knowing about it until after he bought the dump truck that was on that inventory list. So I would say he doesn't. Oh, and even when we were when I was on the Finance Committee, I called Don when the building first started, and I said, "When did this come up?" He said, "I didn't know anything about it until they just brought it up." So it doesn't always go the way some other people perceive it.
And this is the reason that we changed the policy. I took him at his word, and I still do, that he got verbal bids. That I don't know if it was an incapacity to do the formal bidding process. We talked about getting administrative help for him. He said he didn't need that, or if it was, I don't really know, but that was, the statement that he made was accurate, and I had many conversations with him over the years about getting competitive bids. I mean, sometimes we bought things from state surplus, that isn't how it works. And sometimes we would buy, used equipment, which you can't bid a used piece of equipment. But on new equipment, he would shop around and get bids, quotations, but it just wasn't formal. And so that's why we changed the policy to make it, more informal and matching what he was doing. And all I'm saying now is, maybe the time has come that all the departments behave the same with respect to the bid process. I'm not, pointing a finger at anybody or saying anything. I mean, it was done with the Board of Selectmen's knowledge and my knowledge. I mean, but I'll just leave it at that for now.
So moving.
I mean, this doesn't need to be a rancorous discussion. It's really just a very practical recommendation in my mind.
Yeah, so moving forward, I think that this committee should have some kind of recommendation.
Right.
Just say, hey, this is our recommendation, and I think that we want this across all departments. I think that and then leave it up to the town from there for all the
Right.
rest of the details.
Yeah, well, when I get to my item, that's gonna be my recommendation, actually.
Oh, okay.
So
All right.
that's exactly what I'm thinking is the thing to do, not for us to get involved in this, but to ask the staff to take a look at this again in light of these policies and come back with, to the Board of Selectmen, to the Budget Finance Committee with a recommended revision, or if they say the current policy is fine, you know, a substantiation of that, and we can consider that as well. You know, I don't think it's going to be when you look at the weight of the evidence with the other towns. So, anyway,
Okay, well, I guess we're not gonna take any action at this time on it, right?
well, no, I'm,
Okay.
well, I can jump ahead. I'm recommending that the committee, you know, have a discussion about competitive bidding, which we're doing, and to ensure transparency and accountability. And I think my recommendation would be to our committee to ask the administration to take a look at the current purchasing policy, and in light of the information that we will provide to them, or they provide it to us, so they have it. So basically, if everybody believes that there should be, you know, changes to make it more uniform, strengthen it, whatever you want to use for terminology, then that would be my recommendation, and send it back to them and say, what do you think? And bring something back, or tell us that we're wrong, you know, give us some feedback on this idea.
Okay, that seems
But
reasonable.
I think it's pretty clear that, you know, that it needs some work. That's my
Yes.
own opinion, that's not a committee opinion, of course.
Okay. So, right at this time, do we need to do anything more as a committee?
Well, I
at
think
this
we should
moment?
take a vote to, you know, to recommend that the staff take a look at this the current policy in view of this information, and
Is it better to have that recommendation after your piece here coming up? Is it kind of tying together? 'Cause
it doesn't really matter, I don't think.
I would like to hear what Don has to say first before moving.
okay.
Kind of recommendation, I think. Still do recommendation, but
Okay, yeah.
I'd like to hear what you have to say.
All right,
Okay.
yeah.
If that's
All
okay.
right. So, why don't we take up item C, review of the, are you ready to move on to?
I guess so,
item C?
sure.
Review of the state bid and town truck
Yeah,
specifications.
so going
John?
back to the last meeting, you know, where Nathan talked about an additional new truck, and, you know, we had a new truck I guess that was delivered at the first part of the year, and in the last fiscal year. And so this truck, you know, to my knowledge, was not in this current year capital plan, but it was an advantageous, you know, purchase that he wanted to make. And so that was, you know, of concern to me, given the magnitude of the purchase. It's a significant capital acquisition. So, you know, I'm not judging, by the way, whether we need the truck or we don't need the truck, or whether it's the right truck or the wrong truck. I trust Nathan on that. I think he knows what he needs and what he wants. And so it's, once again, just more of a procedural sort of thing. You know, I would like to see bids, you know, competitive written bids for it from, you know, vendors, because it is a new vehicle, and the upfitting is also all brand new and there are people who do that competitively in the state of Maine. There's at least 2, if not 3 companies that do that. Maybe there are more, I don't know. And but when Nathan said he was using the state bid, you know, I was like, that's great. In my 40 years of municipal government, I've never done that, and I've never known a town that did that, but he was saying that he is using the state bid. So the state bid would mean that the state put out a detailed specification, and I mean a detailed specification. You know, and I got some information from the state's chief procurement officer, Bill Allen, and I think that the documentation between the specifications and the contract ran to about 116 pages. So that's beyond the pale, but that's what the state of Maine does. And so, you know, but so Nathan said he was going to buy a truck from the state bid, and so what the state does is they have an array of trucks. They may not be all with the same, you know, provider. In this case, he referenced Daigle and Houghton and showed a certification for Daigle and Houghton that they had agreed to sell the trucks to the towns at the same rate as the state, as long as the specifications did not deviate from the state specifications. So that's all great. So you have a list of trucks, and you can, you know, pick, and here they are. They range for, you know, cab and chassis from, which is what we're getting, from about $98,000 to about $128,000, depending on how they're equipped. And and they give you the model number, the GVW, everything you can possibly want in great detail. And so what I learned, though, is that the cost of the truck that Nathan was proposing is $144,950. The most expensive truck that the state had on this bid array from Daigle and Houghton that he was referencing is $128,856. So that's a, $16,093 difference, or about 12.4% more than this. And so that says to me that it's not these trucks, and I'll get to that in a minute, but it's equipped differently, possibly, or it's priced differently, possibly. So that's what I was thinking. But then I found out that it's actually a different truck altogether from the model number than anything here. So it's not any of the state bid trucks. And additionally, Daigle and Holton doesn't have the state bid. They had it up until March, but they don't have it now, and so the pricing would not be subject to this today. So I just think it's, once again, incumbent upon the town to go and bid the truck as it should be done, and send it out to competitive vendors, get the pricing, do your research. Well, first of all, develop a detailed specification, what you need. And I would, for one, would advocate that we buy a good truck, not necessarily a state bid truck. They really do, despite the criticism they get from some quarters, they really do buy trucks at the price point is the big thing for them. They buy a lot of trucks, and I think for a municipal truck, most municipalities, some more than others, but most municipalities custom spec their trucks. The fire department has custom specifications for their trucks that, are to make them suited for this, this Raymond, hilly terrain, and so you want more horsepower, you want different gear ratios, you want more heavy-duty components. That's all fine, and that's all stuff that Nathan's an expert at, and he should have what he wants, in my opinion. And I think the issue really is, do we want to just go buy a truck from a vendor? And that's what you got here, is a proposal from a vendor. You don't have a specification and a response. You've got a proposal with $1 on it, and the same thing from Central Maine, HP Fairfield Central Maine, is just a proposal with $1 figure on it. So I'm not seeing a competitive bid or a state bid, and I'd like to see a bid. And so my recommendation would be that the committee recommend to the selectmen, to the staff, that we have a purchasing policy that's uniform across all departments. And look at the current policy and see if it might need some revising based on the information that they got for us and that we reviewed. And like I said, this is not anything, to me, it's an administrative thing more than anything else. And it's a good governance thing, it's a transparency thing, it's an accountability thing, it's an important thing.
Karen, can I ask a question?
Okay.
I'm just genuinely curious because I don't know the answer to this. When you guys are talking about doing like 3 bids, I get that. How does the public safety do it? Is there certain manufacturers that just do fire trucks, do just ambulance? How would that work because of how expensive a fire truck is? And if that's the policy that you guys might be possibly suggesting, how would that go, like public safety? Because I don't know.
I can speak to that because I've been involved in it. Set of specs are put together, committee sits down, puts together a set of specs, and an RFP goes out, and it goes out to all, I'm not going to say every vendor, but goes out to a wide array of vendors.
Okay.
And they come back with a proposal, we match it up against their proposal, against our specs, and inevitably their proposal goes way over what we've got to spend or want to spend. And then we decide those pieces that aren't critical. And I look real quick on this set of specs, and I don't know why you need 4 radio speakers in a dump truck to plow snow, but that's okay. I'm using that as an example. Those would be the things that we'd look at. We'd look at brake size, we'd look at axles, we'd look at whether it's a hot dipped zinc or
Frame.
aluminum or whatever the frame is, and go through each of those pieces and come up with a comparative. Usually get down to 3 or 4 vendors and then invite them to come in and do their spiel on what it is and what they can provide. And right now on fire trucks, on an ambulance, you're waiting almost 3 years to get an ambulance now. That's one of the real problems. Same thing on a fire truck. The alternate is to buy one they got sitting on the lot, but it may not. Again, prior history shows that doesn't always fit your needs. You know, you don't want a city truck out here, you need the water capability. And I'm using those as examples. That's how
So
public
the-
safety approaches it. These are the things we need.
Okay. So
And-
do you
and it
take
also goes out
also
to
like
that-
where it's at too, like maybe like in a different state or?
We don't care.
Okay.
I mean,
Nope, I didn't know. I didn't know. How it
well,
worked.
for example, the fire truck that's being built now is being built in Wisconsin. It could have been built in Florida just as well as not. The one before by the same company was built in Florida. The
Yeah.
truck
Okay.
before that, we went to Canada for.
I would say that the process needs to be the same, but fire trucks are more of a specialized item, so that's why they're, you know, nationally sourced. You know, a dump truck, basically, is going to be something that is going to be able to be provided by a Maine dealer, or you may attract a New Hampshire or Massachusetts dealer. I think some of the towns, the further south you go, have that happen. But it's not as specialized a piece of equipment. Now, the plow equipment is, but it also doesn't make sense to buy plow equipment from some distant company, because you need to get parts and you need to get service in Maine.
And that's part of the consideration.
Yeah, I know.
When we look at the bids, where the service is, what they provide for
Right.
service, and how close they match up. Those are all, that's why it's a request for proposal, it's not a bid, per se.
And the other thing about, and I'm not sure about dump trucks as much as fire trucks, but there are specific things you want, and some vendors provide them, others don't or can't.
Exactly.
But you still accept their proposal, you still review it, and sometimes when cost considerations come into play, you ultimately sometimes have to accept something that's not exactly what you want.
Yeah, and I did the same thing in the military on scoop loaders and low beds, where we had to put out the
Yeah.
proposal,
But, right.
brought it back, and did you match it or you didn't match it?
But that's not what I want, though, personally for me. I mean, I want the Public Works Department to have the equipment that they need. It can be sourced locally. They shouldn't, I mean, I was happy when I thought he was doing the state bid, because that's a cost thing, that's the administration piece. But I was thinking, do we really want a state bid truck? We don't. We want to have a truck that meets our needs. And I don't, whether it's 144,000 or 100 and whatever, 80,000, it doesn't, to me, that's not material. I think to get what you need at a competitive price is what I'm asking.
So Don, so when you're doing the proposal then for the bidding policy, does that put a hindrance on public safety then, because of having to do, it is specialized equipment? You know what I mean? Because if you're doing a boilerplate policy, bidding policy, is that going to hinder public safety because it is specialized?
No, it's basically just saying that we want to, you know, put it out for competitive bid, and to, what we do, and I'm not saying there hasn't been an instance where it hasn't happened in the other departments, but it's most notably in the two biggest departments. But you put it out to all known vendors, and then sometimes you even run an advertisement to make sure people know about it. And so, but it's just the difference is they're more specialized equipment that you might source out of the state of Maine, and you probably do mostly source out of the state of Maine. There aren't any major fire truck
Nobody
manufacturers
builds them in Maine.
And there aren't any people building trucks in Maine either, but there are many vendors who are selling trucks that are identical to one another, so that it makes sense to ask for prices from more than one.
Definitely, and you want your service. Service is a big piece of it. And it is in public works. You don't want to have to take it to Holton.
Well, Daigle and Holton is in Fort Kent or Herman, Maine, so that, I mean, that's not ideal, but there are international dealers. You could buy it from Daigle and Holton if they have the best price and get it serviced in Portland.
Oh, exactly. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, but that is a consideration.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Dennis?
Just another point, Dennis Morse again, 340 Cape. I thought the chief was very detailed when he was talking about the ambulance complications, and that because of those complications that Cliff just talked about, he spec'd out an ambulance that they could change out the body and the chassis so that it could get twice the length, and you may know more details. I just remember the presentation. I was pretty impressed because I never seen that in my career in 32 years. but it would extend the life expectancy of the very elaborate, expensive operating room, if you will. I know it isn't, but it might as well be. They have everything they need to do whatever they have to do in that compartment. And they can literally take it off the ambulance and put it on another with minor, improvements on it or repairs. And that's one of the things he said that he was either looking at or moving towards because of this 3-year wait and the wear and tear an ambulance takes. So that's pretty special.
So in that case, you'd be bidding a cabin chassis in that and moving the body?
Yes.
And
Haven't we done that before?
We did it once. We did it once when we had a lot of complications with the frame and the alignment, and there was some wiring problems. And so we didn't have the money, so we had it refurbed. It wasn't like taking the compartment off, setting it aside and putting a new one on. I mean, this is going to be if it works, it's going to be revolutionary for an ambulance and the delay in getting them.
it does work, and some vendors are much better. Some manufacturers are much better at it than others, and they become more plug and play. It used to be a real horror show to move stuff around, and because of the cost.
Well, I thought back in that instance, we bought a particular brand because of that ability and because it was structurally had better integrity, it was safer for our people, and it was more expensive too.
Yes. That's different. That was an ambulance, Braun?
Braun.
Yeah, that was really superior, and because of the hills, the roads, the camp roads, and everything else, and we did a review. We studied all the reviews of the ambulances. We looked at our particular topographical issues. They were one of the first ambulances to throw the on-spot chains on it. They were very advanced, and they were more expensive, but not off the chart expensive. And so they did say they'd be able to change out things, but Cliff just told you what happened. It wasn't as easy as just taking it off and plug and play.
But maybe that's advanced some now.
Yes,
Come
exactly.
a long ways now.
Yeah. But anyhow, to answer the base question, I don't think it affects the fire department, public safety department, no.
Okay, do you have a motion in mind of a recommendation that you would like to make at this time, or do you want to wait and?
Well, I'd like to get it going. What do you think?
I would like to.
So, I mean, I'd like to move that the Budget Finance Committee recommend to town administration that they take a look at the current purchasing policy with the possibility of review and improvement based upon some of the policies we've seen from the towns that we collected, or they collected information for us. And if they decide that after looking at all that information that the policy is fine, they could come back with that recommendation. I mean, it's really up to them. But I think it's time to make sure we have uniformity, transparency, accountability, and at the bottom line, though, it comes down to, at some level, it comes down to cost considerations too. But I don't want to be in a position where we're forcing departments to buy stuff that doesn't meet their needs. All I'm saying is that we should buy what we need at a competitive price. And I now just screwed up the motion by adding all that other stuff.
Yes, I was just going to ask
But
you if you could condense that.
So basically,
Best buy for the towns.
move to send it back to staff and take a look at the purchasing policy and see if it might benefit from review and improvement, and report back.
Okay.
If the selectmen and, I guess, staff want to tend to take that project, so. I mean, it's a recommendation, right? So it's our
Yes.
recommendation?
Yes.
Or my recommendation, I guess, at this point.
So the motion is to move the Budget Finance Committee recommend to the administration, take a look at the current policy and look at other town policies for review and improvement. Sound good?
Sure.
Okay, is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I like it.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay. It's unanimous and the motion carries. Because of the schedule, I think the videographer's schedule, we had to move the meeting that was going to be at the end of November to either early in November or early December. And we went with Friday, November 8. But with consideration to when our next normal meeting would be, the third Wednesday, I mean, do we need to have a meeting on November 8, or do we just want to go with one in November and then not have a meeting in December? So the third Wednesday in November, the 20th. Have one 12 days after? That doesn't seem to make any sense.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Just as I stated, my November may be hit or miss. So, but not having a December meeting, I think will give us a little rest before budget season comes around.
Right, and I'm sure that there'll be a lot going on with the town staff preparing for the
And-
budget season.
And it
The only
sounds,
thing that's going to have to happen, and I don't know, this is really more of a staff question, but the scheduling for the budget review is going to be something that I think the selectmen are going to set, and then, you know, that probably they'll coordinate with you to decide on dates that meet both groups, accommodate both groups. You know,
I would
the
hope
budget,
so.
the budget schedule, so that's the thing that would, you know, probably be underway, setting budget goals for the Board of Selectmen and a schedule. Goals probably in December, and maybe the schedule, I would think the schedule maybe too. My memory's not what it used to be, but that's
me
something
either.
that has to happen, you know, that the Board of Selectmen will set budget goals, and they'll establish a schedule for reviews.
is it better to take November off as opposed to December?
Well, no, we meet in November, but I'm saying that there might have to be something in December. I would defer to staff on that. I wouldn't want to say we're not going to have a meeting if they need us to have a meeting for input.
Oh, I understand.
But I don't know if they do. I mean, there may be a way that, I never was really deeply involved in coordinating the scheduling. That was the finance director, so.
What about just,
The option was November 8 or December 3. And so we went with November 8.
Well, if I was gonna pick between the two, I'd take the December meeting.
yeah, it's too close. I think,
Number 4, correct?
December 3.
Tuesday?
That was what was offered,
Okay,
December 3.
okay.
It was November 8 or December
Yeah,
3.
Oh, so,
Yeah.
maybe I'm wrong. Is this for the joint meeting? Is that what time? Okay.
This is strictly Budget Finance Committee.
I would go later rather than earlier in case those things that I was talking, and I don't know if they'll, I mean, they're here. I mean, you could ask the finance director what her thoughts are on the schedule and see what she's planning. I would think that we'd want to coordinate with them somehow.
Well, actually, this is Brenda. I'm still involved pretty heavily with the audit. That's my main focus right now, is to get through the audit and have all the records accurate at this point. But if I were going to be a betting woman, I would say the budget season's going to be a little bit later than earlier. So based upon that, I guess your later choice of December 3rd would probably be preferable, because you may have more information from me by then.
Okay.
And I can speak to the schedule. Brenda hasn't been involved with it as yet, but I have been for the last 10 years. The schedule will be presented to the select board in December, and I'll basically go off last year's schedule. I'll sit with Brenda and we'll look at it to make sure it fits what she needs as well. And then once the selectmen are fairly happy with it, then we'll send it out to the Budget Finance Committee chair to get input to see if those dates fit your committee. That's how we've done it for the last 10 years.
so if we're meeting on the 3rd, I don't know when selectmen are meeting, but that would still be.
They're meeting December 10th.
So, okay, so it'd be that would be after our meeting anyway.
So they'll be reaching out, it sounds like. So you must have worked with the chair of the committee, basically?
Yes.
And so they'll reach out to the chair of the committee, and the chair will probably reach out to the membership, and the selectmen will establish the dates, obviously, and then we react to them, and hopefully and always there's some adjustment between the parties. And then inevitably, there's changes because things happen as things roll along. And I can appreciate Brenda's position with the audit and everything, and that the budget may have to be later. That all makes sense too, so.
Yeah, so personally, I think December would be a better option. It doesn't,
Yeah.
not a better option.
I think it's the better option, but I don't think we're gonna be looking at a schedule then.
Yeah.
Obviously, because we just heard that it's gonna be at the first selectman meeting, which it always is.
Okay, Sue, I have a question for you. I can't remember if the budget committee was still going to meet on November 20th or not.
The 20th bill won't be back yet, so you can't.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that was the one that was going to be canceled, 11/20, and, okay, so then we would, so here we are, October. Do we do November 8 and December 3? Is that how we want to do it?
Well, if you're gonna do November 8th, I think it might make more sense to do a meeting after the Board of Selectmen. You know, have set their schedule and so forth, before Christmas, but after their meeting.
I'm a little bit confused.
So after the 10th of December is what you're saying, right?
Yeah,
now?
yeah, after the 10th of December, maybe.
Okay.
But I mean, you were talking about at one point, we were talking about taking December off. I think we were talking about having one in November, or having one in December, taking December off. I mean, I'm a little confused myself, but I think having one on November 8th would be fine, and then if you wanted to have one in December, you could have it I think the most reasonable, efficient thing to do might be to have it after the Board of Selectmen have made some decisions, so we can react to that, or you can do it the way Sue's done it in the past, when she was town clerk, and, have her consult with you.
And I know we'll have more reconciliation information. They said, potentially by the end of the week. So we will have some more information for us for June shortly. So I think it would be beneficial, in my mind, to meet in November. Because I think we're going to get a lot more information versus, 2 months and then we get hit with a lot.
And we can address the December meeting at that time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so we'll keep November 8 and we will do December 3rd as well.
We'll keep November 8th and decide what the date is for December, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation. We'll do November 8th, and on the 8th, we'll make a decision on the December meeting.
Okay.
See how far stuff's flowed at that point in time.
Yeah, either before or after the select board
Yeah.
meeting.
Works.
Okay. I think that will work well. So we'll go ahead and meet again on Friday, November 8.
And if you can't make it, we'll be there with you in spirit, cheering you on. And your wife. Yes.
Bring the wife and baby.
Yeah.
That's right, exactly.
Bring the wife and baby, right? They're all part of the family.
That's right.
Okay. There's, what's missing on here, is there any public comment?
Do you still have this, is that item a dead item now?
I got financing for the new dump truck.
Well,
The Public Works Director's not here, so I guess I don't know where that issue is now, do you? Consideration of financing a new dump truck and excavator? I mean, was that a carryover item or something? What was that?
The excavator was gonna end up as a CIP next year. Was that my understanding last time?
Well, I was confused because at one point didn't
That he was
Nathan
gonna
said-
put it off a year?
Well, there was that, and then I think there was also a discussion that they'd already bought the truck.
Town
The
website.
truck, I think they bought. The
Well,
truck,
I think he said they bought the truck, but
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true.
that's what
Yeah, probably
that's what I
that's what it
remember too, Don.
Yeah.
okay.
I kinda shivered.
My agenda doesn't match what you have. So, all right, item D is consideration of financing a new dump truck and excavator. We'll take that up.
Well, I don't think we can, because the Public Works Director's not here. I mean, he's the person.
Is he on Zoom? Is Nathan White on Zoom?
Don't see him.
He is not, and I emailed you before the meeting, Karen, and you agreed to take that off the agenda. That's why it's not on the agendas.
It's on the agenda that I'm looking at on the website, but maybe, I mean, I just pulled it up on the website.
Yeah, that's where I got mine from.
And the one I printed doesn't have it.
But the one that's
Because I'd
advertised
asked you to
has it.
remove it.
This is the one that governs right here, so, but I don't think we can do anything without the staff members. And I'm surprised that he's not here. There's a couple items on here that are in his department.
Because that was supposed to be removed from the agenda.
Well, there's
so
one
that
item, then there's
would be
one
nice.
item in his department that's significant.
Right.
Carry it over to November meeting.
Yes, we'll carry that over to the November meeting. So we'll table that. Is there a motion to table?
So moved.
Okay. Second?
Second.
All in favor of tabling to the December meeting? November 8 meeting?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would like to ask a question, though.
Okay, go ahead.
Did we buy the truck
Oh.
already?
That's a very good question. Sue, has the truck been purchased?
Yes, it has been ordered.
Okay, well, how is it being financed?
It's not being financed. It won't be in for a bit, so.
So this is the truck that Nathan said that he really didn't need urgently, correct?
I don't recall. I believe that's correct.
Well, it's correct.
And we don't have to pay for it till next year, so.
Right, but we don't need it till next year, maybe.
Well, we're not getting it till next year.
Next
so
year, is
that's-
that fiscal year, or are we talking calendar year? Because I thought it was gonna be in early in the
Next
next
fiscal
calendar
year.
year.
Next fiscal year.
Maybe we shouldn't table this right this second.
What do you mean?
Maybe we should move this. Maybe we should discuss it a little bit. I mean, it's already been ordered.
Were you aware the truck was ordered, Dennis?
I thought he actually said it to you guys at the last meeting.
Well, that's what, but I
think he did.
Yeah.
Dennis Morris, 340 Cape. I can help a little bit here, because, you know, when I was with you guys, and we weren't getting a lot of information, as you know, the first thing we received, and I've got a timetable, was 2/29/24, which was an inventory list that Cerise had put together. I had asked her to do something, and I wondered what was going on with the bond without a capital improvement program, because I knew everyone had to be a part of it. So in that, it had a list of all of his inventory, and then it had a new cost, and then had a replacement plan. And so what I did is took that plan that I've had on the front page, and then I took the July 24th meeting you had when you received a real plan that had the details a little further out and everything. And then I had the reserve. So that was July 27th. And then I got the capital improvement reserve, and I put them all together on a timetable. And so I can tell you what was on the schedule. And then I used something the select board gets, which is warrants and department summary. And I was able to go through and do what I requested several times over the 3 years, which is, what did you purchase over the last 3 to 5 years? And I've since requested that from the town manager. And so the fleet inventory, which is what it was called, that Cerise put together, was later moved over and became the plan. And you all remember this because we all looked at it, and that was when the number 2 wasn't on the list. Remember that conversation? It ended up being the excavator. And so what was laid out in this plan and further changed with the new plan was that number 5, which was a 2006 International dump truck, which original cost was 109, was going to be replaced in the 24 budget. And that was replaced. He ordered it in October. And number 9 was going to be replaced, which was the 2015 Explorer. Again, I'm working off in this list, so you understand my timetable. And I did this for transparency so that we would all understand where we were. Number 13, which is a 2018 250, originally purchased at $45,000. That was going to actually be 25, and that was going to be the fire department inspector. And that was the only, nothing else was in 25. So the 2 and the 24 was the dump truck and the Explorer, according to this. Now, nothing else in 25, but in 26, the 2016 Chevy pickup truck was going to be replaced. The 2019 550 dump truck plow was going to be replaced in 26. The 2019 250 plow truck was going to be replaced in 26. The 2019 Explorer was going to be replaced in 26. And again, that was a combination of this. So in the July 24, you received the CIP plan from the town manager and Nathan. I don't know if he was at the meeting. This is what's been replaced. Number 5, which is the 2006, was replaced in 24. It was $216,000 is what was listed at the price. 39, which wasn't mentioned up here, is the 2000 excavator. That was added in on this one, saying that it would be replaced now. The second part of that, which is the revenues when it gets combined, number 13, which is again the 254, 75,000, nothing, no dates or anything else. Then in 25, 26, which is coming up, this is the next budget after the one you're working on. Number 9, which is the Explorer. It's for the CEO. That's supposed to be replaced in number 10, which is the 2016, is actually scheduled in that 25, 26 year. And the 14, which is a 2019, was going to be replaced in 2026. So those are all online with what this ended up saying. What the town manager just said is that they ordered the truck, but it's not going to go until next year's budget, which is what was outlined here. It was proposed. So that is staying with all this paperwork that came together. The excavator I can't find anywhere until it was added in on this last one. Nor can I find any conversation saying that he had to replace it on any of the meetings I went back to. So all in all, the conversation about financing evidently was put off completely. I don't know if they looked into it. I didn't hear any response to that. But I do know that when I started to put together what was actually in the CIP plan to figure out whether this was doable, the reserve funds were kind of distorted. And I did meet with the town manager, and she explained that there were some issues. So because Brenda wasn't at work, she was working from home, and I had been talking to Cerise on some of the abbreviations. When you start to deal with this stuff, in the abbreviations, I didn't know what GL was, I guess it's General Ledger, and I called her and I said, I don't understand some of this stuff. The 86, so what I did is I listed all the things that were bought from July until September 29th. And that come out to about 116,000. There's another 10 that I didn't understand, so I'll just call it 120. But the rollover from last year, which you don't see in the budget, you don't see it until you look down bottom, and you can see it on your report, was 163,000 that was carried over to the 225. So I was under the impression that there was 388,000 carried over from last year. that's a good sum of money to carry over. And I didn't understand how that was possible buying the pickup truck, buying the dump truck. So I asked her, how do you buy a truck in October and outfit it and pay for it in September? And she said, well, the equipment came in June, but Nathan didn't want to pay for it until the fall. So he's going to try to see if he could get the invoice changed so that he could take it out of this year's budget. And that may be what they're dealing with right now, I don't know. But when you add that carryover and you subtract that all out, that's $87,000 that came out of this rollover. And it gets down to $264,000 this year that he currently has in it. Now, give or take, 20 grand. But that's a heck of a lot more than 200,000 that he said at the budget meeting. And that's something we've not been able to nail down here since I've been on the Budget and Finance Committee, because there's problems with invoices coming in at the end of June, sometimes in July. It's a very complex and convoluted process, and I probably have 50 or 60 hours in just taking these three things, putting them together, going through the warrants, circling everything as the CIP, and really, some of it, like the pickup truck, $14,000 was a used pickup truck for Tasseltop. There was a tool shed, a set of shelves that were $5,000 to $6,000.
Getting off track here.
Dennis, that's his budget. He's allowed to spend that.
I know that. I didn't say he wasn't allowed to do it.
But you're bringing this stuff up like he's not allowed to, and probably the best person to answer what's in that fund is Brenda or Sue. Once they get it
all I know
figured
is what
out,
Cerise
instead of trying
told
to
me.
figure it out yourself.
This isn't, well, we've asked these questions over and over again for 3 years, so now I'm doing it myself. I'm going through the warrants that we signed. Teresa, please. We're going
But guess what we just found out is the books are messed up.
Yeah, 87,000 was carried over into this budget out of the 100. That's what Cerise said.
Charisse was wrong on things.
Well,
and
this
she's
one
wrong
was
on some
something
of the book
Nathan told her
things.
he was doing. So I bet you
What
money.
was that?
I bet you money. I'll bet you money that what she said was true to me, and that he didn't want Cerise.
Oh, no, Charisse is gone, so we can't even bring that up. So we're going with what's current on the books.
She made a copy of the receipt, just so you know.
Conversation fund.
Just so
You know
you know.
what? I don't think this is appropriate to be discussing this because you're making assumptions on stuff.
Teresa.
I think it needs to come out of the finance director and the town manager to sit down with you, but not sit here and make assumptions.
I'm not doing assumptions. I'm talking about what I've signed off on the warrants.
Madam Chair, this is public comment. There's no back and forth.
Right.
Thank you.
There was a lot of back and forth last night,
Thank
and
you.
you were part of it.
This isn't public comment.
Well, let me-
This was questions that Don asked Dennis about his opinion on this, so it's not public comment.
Madam
This
Chair,
is
where are we
public
on the
comment.
agenda?
We have a motion on the floor to table the discussion of the consideration, where's the agenda, because it's not on my agenda.
Consideration.
Consideration of financing a new dump truck and excavator. The motion is on the floor.
I'm trying to explain what the answer is, that if it's been purchased, it's going into the right month. I've done the work to say that it's doing that's proper, going in the right year, and that this is what's in the CIP that allows for it. He doesn't have to finance it. He doesn't even have, if it's going in the next year, he doesn't have to finance the excavator. So I think you heard what I had to say, and I think I was trying very hard to be transparent on what I've taken them off on is public warrants and public statements, and it's directly relative to whether or not you want to table it. So I think it's appropriate that he went to the next year.
Could I have some clarification? The CIP is a plan, it's not a funding document, correct?
Yes.
All right, okay, it doesn't give you the authority to spend a nickel.
It does.
It's just a plan.
It
Again,
helps blunt.
I understand that, but it's a plan, it has no dollar value.
no, that's not how they use it with Nathan. He said that they let him spend it as he needs it.
And the other thing about the capital improvement plan is it should be for major non-recurring capital expenditures, not for shelving and tools and things like that, or a used pickup truck for somebody else. once again, that's something maybe that needs to be looked at.
Public parks information.
So we have a motion right now to, if we should postpone this, do we want
To table it to the
table
next meeting.
Table to the next meeting, do we want to continue this conversation? Because, as the Budget Finance Committee, because,
We're all interested in transparency and working to the plan. So I am interested in tabling this to the next meeting on November 8th.
I would agree with that.
And, okay, so the motion, so
I'll
who
s-
made the motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay,
Table it till the next meeting, how's that?
all right, thank you. Is there a second?
yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, all in is there any further discussion? No. Okay, all in favor of tabling to the next meeting on November 8th? All right, the motion carries.
Run around in circles.
All right. So now we are now at public comment. Do we have public comment?
I think you ought to watch the select board meeting and watch how they handled the minutes. Because it was financial matters that were not allowed to be changed and corrected.
Thank you. Peter?
Peter Levitt, 2 Levitt Road. So I hope you'll just indulge me. I was out of state for your last meeting, and so I did catch up afterwards and saw Sean's presentation on traffic safety. I believe he was speaking from a position of basically from the comprehensive plan and what we've garnered from as far as the feeling of the community. So if you'll indulge me for just a minute, I've just got a few things here. And just as a point of clarification, at last night's select board meeting, I did get up and make public comment, and it was basically to remind people of what's going on as far as the review of the draft version of the comprehensive plan and the dates for the public hearing. And the only time there was back and forth that I can recall was basically when I was asked questions from the board. So I believe that you can choose as a committee or a board to ask me questions or clarify things during my public comment. What was going on just there was back and forth. And I my understanding was, I guess I was confused because I thought we had gone into public comment, but I appreciate the fact I was reminded that there was still a motion on the table. Okay, so real quick, like I say, indulge me in this. I just have some documents that I have taken great pains to make very brief and also to highlight. You just pass
Thank
those
you.
down. Be expeditious, but obviously what I want to do is discuss. Oh, you sir. Are you sure? Is it one with a white and with a yellow sticky?
Oh, yeah, let's-
This has got yellow on it. Is this the one you're looking for?
No, that's right. It's got yellow in it. Oh, it's right here. Right here. All right, so basically, the first front sheet basically was just reminding everyone that the draft comprehensive plan is now on the town website. Hopefully, you've had a chance to review it. If not, please, I encourage you to do it. But in particular, under Raymond's priority goals and action listed at the beginning of the draft plan is the statement, invest in road and traffic improvements. So the committee was very adamant about getting that in right at the very beginning, as identifying from the feedback from the community that this is a major issue within the town. Also, if you look under goals, policies, and action items on page 36, the policy is improve road safety. The action item is purchase or lease portable solar power radar speed displays to collect data on speeding in Raymond. The responsible parties are the town manager, the select board, and the Budget Finance Committee. So you should just be aware that in this document, there are things that we actually designated as the responsible parties to be this group. So you should be cognizant of that. Obviously, the implementation committee will be the ones that'll be getting in touch with you for those type of things. The time frame, and this is important, this is a priority action, okay? I'm not necessarily opposed to, and I'm not looking to start any heated debate, but when I heard the discussion at last month's meeting, one of the things I was hearing is kind of the sense that, well, we really do have to study this. And, we really, maybe we get this data and we study it and we determine if this is a good way to go. And I understand you've got fiduciary responsibilities and you're not just going to do something like that. But I also know, being here for 30 plus years in this town, that the Raymond way is not always the most expeditious way. And that there are certainly things that happen that if we look back at the 2004 and then the implementation committee of 2010 when they had their final report, it was unfortunate how many of these 40 policies and action items actually hadn't been acted on, even the priority ones. And so I just give you that. Now, if you go through the documents, the first one I highlighted was radar speed feedback signs. And basically, I highlighted the pros and cons. And with anything else, there are pros and cons. And what everyone needs to be aware of is that there is no one solution to this issue. And that similar to affordable housing, we are not in a bubble. It's a community, it's a municipality, it's a city, town, state, national issue as far as speeding. What we do know is that there are more in the way of pedestrian deaths associated with traffic accidents today than there were 5 years ago. It may be that the accidents are down, but deaths to pedestrians, bicyclists, and walkers is more prevalent that those, if they're hit by a car, it'll be fatal. So is it cost effective? Yes. Compared to physical measures, just think about this for a second. This is the first step in trying to do something about what the citizens in this community say is a major issue. It's not the be-all, end-all. It's the first step. In the final stages, when a community can't take it anymore, there's speed tables, there's speed bumps, there's an active police force, there's road narrowing and island placement, all in an effort to try and slow the traffic down. I don't know a whole lot of people that are interested in that in their community. Unfortunately, what the reality is that those things have to happen at times when there's no other answer. So this is a first step. And really, the science is called traffic calming, which is what it is. And the pros are that the moderate speed reduction was 2 to 8 miles per hour. Not a lot. With more significant reduction of excessive speeds of 10 plus miles per hour over posted speed limits. The cons, effectiveness may reduce overall time, may be reduced overall time unless there's regular police enforcement. So the data does show that. The combination of the two, there's almost no violence, or violations. So if you have a cop visible in a cruiser and you have one of these radar signs, nobody speeds. And the other con is that it's not effective as regularly consistent law enforcement. So I think you're getting the whole point there. And under context, I highlighted that these devices typically are used in transitional zones or placed in an area like a school zone. So it does make sense to do that. Placing them everywhere to just slow someone down from going by your house isn't necessarily the strategy. But if you're coming off of 302 into the village, it absolutely is. If you're coming down this road when school is in session, it absolutely is. And it is effective, and it does work. But they've got to be strategically placed. Some of the arguments about, we need these big trailers with these big signs, if you notice, they're kind of disappearing. So I know that what we heard or what you heard at the last meeting was the fact that we have a couple of those. One of them doesn't work, and one of them we can borrow from the county. And, I guess my question is, would have been then, would have been, had I been at that meeting, would have been, well, how long have we had that one that's broken? Did the county give it to us broken? No. So if they didn't give it to us broken, why can't we get a part? And can we not get a part because it's obsolete? And that's usually what I find is the most difficult part of relocating a part. But anyway, what I did price out was the fact that what I heard was $15,000 to $30,000. That's what I heard at the meeting, right? I've researched it. For the type that was being described, the ones on the trailer, $6,000 to $8,000 of that's for the trailer. You don't need it. What we're seeing more and more is the signs that are on posts that are solar powered, that give the display, that collect data, that are removable from one post to another so you can move them around. And you can get them for under $10,000, and that's with all of the bells and whistles. So it's got Bluetooth capability. You don't have one of your public works guys scaling up on top of the pole to pull the thing. They push and click, and they download the data, and it's there. Anyway, the next one I went into was the residents address speeding through rural towns. I just thought it was interesting to get something from Maine, and the highlight is signs probably are our first thing that we're going to try to see if that does anything at all, and then we'll just keep trying until we reach a solution. Maybe it'll be a speed table or speed bumps or narrowing the roads, all highly expensive or irritating compared to a sign. But once again, this resident was saying, we'll start there. It's someplace to start. Not only will it has the data showed that it will calm the traffic. Won't resolve the issue of speeding. It'll calm the traffic, but it will also collect data. So, not to bore you too much, but one more on the in the towns in Maine, so that we just have this as established. Enhanced enforcement, I think that really works, said Senator Rosen. It works. It worked in Hampton. It's worked in Stockton Bridge, Searsport, so I'd like to see that happen. I don't want to get it lost, and I guess I would ask a question, although I'm not looking for a back and forth. I haven't heard in any of the discussions at this committee, how is the Cumberland County Sheriffs paid for their hours here? Is it budgeted, or is it part of our county taxes?
County taxes.
Yeah, county
So in
commissioners.
fact, Raymond is not directly paying or budgeting for our sheriff's service. We contract with them for a certain number of hours, and they assign us. No, we don't contract them for certain.
No.
No,
So we get what they have available,
yes, yeah.
and for that, that is paid out of our tax to the county.
Right.
Yes.
It's provided to us by.
So if we were to want, like, let's say Naples or some of these other surrounding communities have done, which is to ask for additional coverage hours, would that also come out of the Cumberland County tax?
No.
No, we would pay that individually.
Correct.
Okay. So that was just, I just want to get a point of clarification as far as, who's paying for this? How many hours do we get? How many more hours could we get? I don't want to be lost in the fact that that everything in all of the research I've done is very clear.
Right.
The number one modifier of the speed on your roads is a visual of a police officer.
They did say that they were short-staffed, so it would be difficult. So that was one of the things.
Absolutely, and I
Yeah.
understand that. Firefighters, rescue people, police, everybody's short-staffed, right? However, there are area communities that have been able to secure additional hours. And I guess my thinking is, and this isn't as the comprehensive plan, it's just as my thinking is, what you do is you would get those additional hours for sheriff's coverage, and you would say, you're not going to house break-ins, you're not going to get cat out of the tree. What you're going to do is you're going to police the roads, and you're going to be highly visible, and you're going to be at many different places.
I think,
That's not going to work.
That doesn't
I-
work.
They're going to have to, they're charged with enforcing the laws of the state of Maine. So if there's a cat in a tree is probably not one, but if there's a domestic violence, if there's an incident where that crosses into the legal realm of the sheriff's office, they're going to have to respond to that. But you could certainly, and having been in 2 towns with municipal police departments, you could certainly say, we'd like you to emphasize, on traffic control. You could do that. And I'm sure that the towns where they do work, they do get some level of, input as to what they'd like to see. But ultimately, I think it's going to be the sheriff and the administration of the sheriff's department that is going to determine how that's going to work.
So I appreciate that. I don't want to be lost on the fact that I believe personally what we need to do is pursue more in the way of policing and for those police being visible for traffic control. As a suggestion, when you're putting up these radar feedback signs and you put them up at the school, if on a certain day the cruiser, the sheriff's car doesn't have to sit there right at the school because public's never going to know when he's sitting there or when he's not. Maybe he can then be going someplace else and sitting someplace else to be visible. So once again, this is just another tool in the toolbox. So anyway, the signs are portable, allowing city staff to move them to different areas where people tend to go above the posted speed limits. I think that was a reflection, and this is basically coming from a town in Maine and what the citizens were giving them feedback on. So does that mean that there's going to be additional cost associated with town employees for downloading this information, moving them around strategically and all that? Absolutely. It's a lot easier to move these signs around than it is to move a trailered Hulk that you have to park off to the side of the road. Anyway, I just also highlighted down that the town of Bar Harbor, Maine installed 6 new radar speed signs to help enforce the speed limits. And that came from Sarah Gilbert, who was the finance director and interim town manager. So there was necessarily support for these things that has to come from the municipality. Then I just gave you a very quick basic chart. The red line is the one that I draw your attention to, and that's that speed reductions were 6 to 8 miles an hour in the 85th percentile. I ran across this a lot as far as the 85th percentile. That's kind of what's looked at in road management in general, and it's what's in the national guidelines for that's what you look at for real speeding being an issue and out of control. And what you can see in this graph is that this is long term. This was done over a year. So I guess my question, and I could pull up 24 of these studies that basically are all saying the same thing. So I guess my question as to whether we need to study this for a year before we get to the point of implementation or not, or whether we have to wait for the comprehensive plan to be approved before we can start looking forward to doing some of these things. I got to tell you, that's not the sense I get from the community. Maybe we'll get more feedback in the next few months, but what I'm getting from the feedback from the community is that this is out of control, has been out of control for a while, hasn't really been addressed, and something needs to be done about it. And we've also got a question here about how are speed limits set and changed? And this was surprising to me. State of Maine is the one that regulates it. It doesn't matter if it's a town road or if it's a state road or a federal road, whatever. It's MDOT that's going to assign, well, not a federal road, but state roads or our community roads. And what we can do, the town isn't able to change legal speed limits on the roadway, only to modify and add regulatory signage to help enforce that speed limit. So nothing is prohibited as far as us establishing these signs, the radar feedback and the like. We don't need MDOT's blessing to do that. And then lastly, if a citizen is concerned with altering the speed limit, the legal speed limit, they can speak to the town engineer. I guess it would be our public works people or whoever our road person is, and that person could speak then to the select board, and that the select board can then approach the Maine DOT about changing a speed limit. What I did find, and when I heard when I reviewed the video from your last meeting, there was a caller that called in, and she said something about be careful about what you ask for, because she was asking about a reduction of speed on Egypt Road, and they increased the speed, and that's right in here. Please note that Maine DOT can say that their own study supports no change, that their study does not recommend lowering the speed limit, and on rare occasion, they have even actually raised the speed limit. So they have the option to do that. So as far as just to be aware that that can happen. So anyway, I bring this all to your attention because we're really getting to the 10th of the 11th hour as far as the Comprehensive Plan Committee goes. And I got to tell you, hallelujah, I'm just about done with this. But having said that, we've taken great pains to be very unambiguous with directions to the implementation committee that's going to follow us in getting this done. And what we also need is backing from all of the committees and boards in town to address those issues of priority. When we assigned a time frame for each of these goals or actions, there are 4 timelines. There's short term, which is 1 to 2 years where we expect to see action, medium term, which is 3 to 5 years, and then there's long term, which are 5 to 10 years. But priority is just that. The time frame is priority. It's to be done first thing, the priority things, so that we don't end up like we did in 2010 with a significant number of priority projects that hadn't even been moved on. So, thank you for your time.
I did have a question. I know we had discussed putting one of those signs up. Does anyone know if one of those speed signs went up anywhere in the town?
You're talking about the
Like
electronic
you're talking
one?
about the trailer, on the one on the trailer, yeah. I know they
that would-
mentioned they were gonna, I haven't seen one.
That would be
It was in the minutes. I was reading the minutes.
a question for the Public Works Director.
Right.
The one we own doesn't work, and Nathan said he'd borrow one from the sheriff, but
Okay.
who knows how long you'd have to wait to get one from the sheriff.
A long time, but and to answer your question, I think one of the signs was a surplus sign, at least unless things have changed since I've been gone, but one was a surplus sign. We got it to support the Derby. Kevin and Nathan got it working. It works, well, no, that's an advisory sign. But I think the county sign should be repairable. The other sign may be from surplus, but I don't know. That I'm now maybe confusing an advisory sign with a speed sign, but I'm guessing that the one that was the county provided is probably a minor repair, but it's probably getting the part, getting it installed, getting it working again. But I love your idea about the pole mounted. That makes way more sense. And I mean, I only have one other thing I'd say about speed zoning and speed regulation from another community, again, having gone through this, 30 years ago, and doing the speed zones with the state of Maine, putting up the early signs with advisory signs, really putting a lot of pressure, police pressure on the areas where we were getting complaints. And what happened? We had a tremendous amount of people stopped for speeding. In most cases, the people who lived there and were complaining.
Yeah, and I know they had mentioned something too about putting in, you mentioned the narrowing of roads and putting in the speed bumps. And I remember someone saying that because of public safety, we could not do that.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
And that was because some of the main roads, like Mill Street and 302, and you just can't.
Portland put them in and took them out.
Yeah, you don't want to, speed bumps, I heard that in the meeting,
And I
I think
totally
last
get it.
night. That's a bad idea.
Yeah, but I did think one of those signs was movable and ready to go. I thought that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had,
Okay.
if I remember what Nathan said, he said that it only displays one speed, and it was
I thought that was the
higher.
broken one. I thought that wasn't the one that they said worked. I thought they said there was one he could borrow that.
I thought he could
right?
borrow one.
He could borrow
You,
one.
you can borrow from the sheriff's department, but the problem is
Okay.
everybody wants to borrow it.
Got it.
I don't know how many they have,
Gotta
but
wait
you
in
have to
line.
go on a wait list, I think. So you'll be waiting. But the one that he got from the sheriff's department should be relatively modern and repairable.
Okay.
Yeah, I just make it clear, I'm not a proponent of speed bumps or speed
yeah.
tables, but in fact, I was using that as, that's the extremist. So when a community is at the point where there's nothing else they can tolerate, or in fact speeding is and crashes are actually just out of the question, that's where what it can come to. So that actually this is a relatively soft approach to begin with, that is not as expensive as I believe it was being painted for you in a previous conversation.
We had a nice pothole by my house, and it worked beautifully until they filled it. It was a great speed to turn.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Anybody on Zoom have any public comments? Okay, hearing none. Budget Finance Committee comments? Everybody's all set?
Yeah, nothing for me.
Okay, we've discussed the next meeting. Adjournment, is there a motion to adjourn?
Make that motion.
My second.
All right, all in favor? Okay, thank you. Stand adjourned.